Hello everybody, so Tiffany here, respiratory therapy student, and I'm here to show you how to remember your ABGs, how to look at an ABG, how to read an ABG, and say, like, you know exactly what it is, okay, just by 3 little letters. Okay, so this is kind of a long story. I promise you, if you listen to this, if you write these out on little flashcards, you're gonna get this, okay? Okay, so there are 2 towns, okay? Well, and let's write out our norms. So pH 7.35 to 7.45, okay? PaCO2. Okay, this is where I do things differently. When I write it out, I don't write the 35 to 45. I do it opposite. I write 45 to 35, so backwards. And then the bicarb, usually you would probably have the O2 there, but the bicarb, 22 to 26. That way I know this side consists of basic, so alkalotic. This side, numbers going that way, stands the acidic, and then anything between is the norm. Okay, if you see this on a test though, if it asks you what's the normal, you would put 35 to 45. Okay, so here's how the story goes. There are 2 towns, okay? There is town A-A-N. Now this represents pH, PaCO2, and bicarb, okay? So in town AAN, which represents uncompensated respiratory acidosis, and in this town, it's town BBN, which represents uncompensated respiratory alkalosis. Okay. Over in town AAN, so in town uncompensated respiratory acidosis, there lives a family, and it's the Nabs. So there's Mr. Nab, there's Mrs. Nab, his wife, and there's their 2 children, Ab, or as I like to say, Abby, and Bab. Mr. Nab will represent the acidic, and because their parents, they are fully compensated. So both parents, so Mr. Nab represents fully compensated, and I'm just going to shorten that out, respiratory acidosis. Mrs. Nab, alkalotic, so I'll explain this in a little bit, the difference on how you know it has to do with the pH on which one of these it would be. But Mrs. Nab is also fully compensated. She's opposite of her husband, metabolic alkalosis. And then Ab and Bab, so the 2 children are like their parents, but because they're children, they're partially compensated. So Abby is partially compensated, and she's like her father, Mr. Nab, respiratory acidosis. And Bab is like her mom, but because she's a child, she's partially compensated, metabolic alkalosis. Okay, so in town AAN, or uncompensated respiratory acidosis, There's Mr. Nab, Mrs. Nab, Abby, or Ab, and Bab, okay? Now over here in town BBN, which is town uncompensated respiratory alkalosis, there lives another family, the NBAs. So there's Mr. NBA, Mrs. NBA, and their 2 children, Abba and Biba. Okay, Mr. NBA will represent acidic. And again, because they're parents, they are fully compensated. Mr. NBA is opposite of Mr. Nab in the sense he's metabolic acidosis. And Mrs. NBA, so alkalotic, is also fully compensated, but she's opposite of her husband, and she's respiratory alkalosis. And Abba is like his father, but because he's a child, he's partially compensated, metabolic acidosis. And Biba is like his mom, but he's partial because he's a child, partially compensated, respiratory alkalosis. And outside of town lives Anna, and she owns a B&B. And this represents, Anna represents uncompensated, metabolic acidosis. So this is uncompensated respiratory acidosis, the town. Anna represents uncompensated metabolic acidosis, and her B&B represents uncompensated metabolic alkalosis. And then let's not forget AAA, BBB, combined acidosis, and combined alkalosis. So how do you make sense of this? Stay tuned. So here's a look. And I'll go over in my second video how to kind of make a little bit more sense of this.